This is Report to Wyoming.
In this episode, I sit down with Dave Hulshizer. He's the executive director at the Casper Youth Crisis Center. As a retired sheriff's deputy in Natrona County and a longtime investigator, Hulshizer can remember numerous times when he had to take custody of an at-risk youth. YCC is coming up on its 40th anniversary. In that time, they've changed their focus to helping provide clinical programs, social and emotional programs, and life skills to youth through the empowerment of achievement, well-being, and belonging versus the punitive model. One of the first questions that I ask is when YCC was started.
It was back in the early 80s. Several churches, some of the Episcopalian churches and other churches around town felt that there was a need for at-risk youth and homeless youth and runaway youth. So they came together. Originally, the idea kind of came together in 1982, and they started a small version of the Youth Crisis Center. But 1984 is actually when we became incorporated. So as of this year, we're actually 40 years old. And the idea is that there was a lot of runaway kids that were being displaced, a lot of sometimes there was abuse and neglect within the home, and kids needed a safe place to go. From there, that opened up into a bigger group, like a group home setting, and we actually ended up with 2 group homes and an actual crisis shelter that were separate facilities. So it operated that way for quite a long time until early 2013. The board of directors of the Youth Crisis Center felt it was important to kind of upgrade buildings, and we built a single building there on 12th Street next to Meals on Wheels, and that officially opened in 2014. So that there at that building, we've got basically 32 beds. We're actually can be licensed for 30 beds, which includes our group home beds and our crisis shelter beds as well. And that licensing is done through the Department of Family Services Licensing Board. So we have to meet all of their conditions. We have to make sure that we have everything that we need to run and operate as a facility by DFS guidelines. So, and that's actually a huge plus, I think, for community members to know that, there is a governing body that makes sure that we're doing things that we're supposed to be doing correctly. And so since 2014, we've been in that building that we're in now next to Meals on Wheels and have been serving at-risk youth.
Wow, and I'm glad you brought up DFS. How does that work? Does DFS make referrals for kids to go to the YCC, or do you want to explain that a little bit?
Absolutely. So we'd consider them a partner agency with us. So the Youth Crisis Center, parents can bring kids in if they're having a hard time, if they're, a lot of times parents just need kind of that pause in order to regather their thoughts and really kind of figure out, okay, how's best to deal with that situation. And we're there for that as well. But DFS is able to make referrals when a kid's involved with the court system here or what we call court-involved youth. A lot of times DFS will be the custodian, and we're a placement for DFS. So we actually do have a contract with DFS for both our group home and our crisis shelter. Again, that's only a portion of what we do, but DFS is a great partner for us, and we see a lot of DFS kiddos, along with a lot of parent placements too.
And so it's supposed to be a temporary situation, correct?
Technically, the crisis shelter is, the placement, the ideal placement is less than 45 days, much less than 45 days is what we're hoping. Sometimes those placements get a little bit longer based upon where they're at in the court system and what's the kiddo is going to be doing in terms of, are they going to a higher level of care in terms of any mental health facility or substance abuse treatment center, or including the boys or girls school. So it's supposed to be a shorter term. Now, our group home is actually a longer program that can last anywhere from 6 months to a year, where kiddos will learn, work an actual at-risk youth program and do a lot of things in order to kind of get themselves back on track and get their lives figured out, life skills, counseling, school, all that kind of stuff.
What age range do you guys typically have?
So our overall age range is we can see kids from 0 to 17. We have had some little ones come in, but usually those are very temporary, maybe an hour or two, sometimes overnight, until Department of Family Services or the parents can figure out a better way. But the majority of our kids in that age group of between 10 and 17 But that age group is shifting, actually, Colby. I mean, we're starting to see younger kids in our facility. So we're starting to see that as a trend where kids are getting younger and younger that come in.
And what about the volume? Have you had to get more certified beds to accommodate the growing, would we say it is a growing problem of at-risk youth?
So we are growing. Our populations do grow. It does fluctuate, though. I think different times of the year is a good way of explaining it. Sometimes summertime, and I saw this in my prior career in law enforcement, where sometimes in the summertime people don't get as, they get concerned about runaways, but it's not weather driven. Like, they're really concerned about the weather part of it. Kids can be out and about moving around all times of the day. But as soon as school gets started back up, and we will see a pretty significant influx of kids, and we usually stay pretty full. We do have a wing that we're currently working to find possible programming for, which would open up another 10 beds here in Casper. Right now we're in the fundraising part of that.
And how are you guys primarily funded?
So about 50% of our funds come from the state contracts that I talked about with the state of Wyoming and DFS. The other half of that is really through us doing grants with local philanthropy groups, local foundations. We've got a lot of great partners that I'd love to be able to mention. The Hughes Foundation has been a great partner. The Natrona Collective Health Trust has been a tremendous partner. The McMurray Foundation has also been a great partner, along with Double Four. There's a lot of great partners that we have, and through our grants and applying for local grants, and also we do receive a federal grant for runaway and homeless youth, that's able to make up for the other 50%.
How are you guys able to enforce that runaways stay at the crisis center? Is that ever difficult?
It is. We actually are not a complete lockdown facility. So if kids do want to run, they have that ability to run. But I think the biggest thing that we do is accommodate the kids in a way that they're not being accommodated at home. We encourage, we're giving them a healthy environment to be in. We're giving them a safe, clean place to stay, a warm place to stay. And the other thing that, the kids know that it's a place to go, a place to stay safe. One of the things that we really encourage, and is a foundation of our program, is our food program. I know I've talked with lots of people that have experienced or know that kids do truly experience like the food insecurity. When I was in law enforcement, when you'd go into a home and you'd see that the kids just didn't have much food, and the kids were wanting good food, I mean, it broke your heart sometimes, and it's a real thing. So for us, sometimes the kids are just happy to be there so that they can have a good fresh meal. And, we're the benefactor of the Wyoming Food Bank, but also the 4-H livestock sale, where we get lots of donations with cows and pigs, and these kids eat really well, but they need to. Because if they got full bellies, it makes the rest of their journey better.
And of course, you guys are concerned with making sure that they stay in school if they're able to. But what other accommodations, just to make kids more comfortable, do you guys try to put in place?
So the school part of it is actually a big part of it too. And yes, they do stay in school. A lot of times we'll actually transport kids to school because we want to keep them in school. And if they're not able to go to school, but we do have instructor that we're contracted with through the school district actually comes to our facility and teaches. So we spend a lot of time on homework help. These kids. But in addition to that, there's a lot of activities we do, a lot of life skills training. We do a lot of support groups. We do, life skills training can include everything of, teaching them how to, cook, teaching them, financial literacy, teaching them, even sitting down with them and going through, a more focused homework part of it to help them get through their school. There's a lot of kids that will come to our center, and we do what's called a Casey Life Skill Assessment, and that just kind of assesses where they're at in terms of what they know. Like if you were to be out on your own at 18, what can you cook? Do you know how to boil water? Do you know how to write an email? So that gives us a good indication of where they're at and some of those life skills that we need to work on. And then we individualize a plan for that kiddo, and we teach that within our life skill groups. But in addition to that, there's outings, crafts that we do. We do have, they have the ability to watch some TV. Believe it or not, we've got old arcade games that we've got for them to where they stand up and actually, are a little more interactive than like an Xbox. So.
Okay, and I know you like puzzles.
There are a lot of
puzzles.
There are a lot of puzzles.
I love
and
puzzles.
The kids love putting them together. A lot of times they'll actually put them together and do that Mod Podge where they kind of make them hard and then we put them up on the walls. But it's for us. It's about trying to make it feel like a home for them. Each kiddo gets their own room. That's for us. That's important. That way they have that ability to kind of relax. What's really cool about our facility is if you walk into the facility and go into the bedrooms, each one of the bedroom has a homemade Afghan by someone here in the community that's donated a homemade Afghan. And it doesn't feel like when you walk into a room, it doesn't feel like it's, a cell or anything like that. It's an actual room. And I think that it makes the kids feel better.
Oh, absolutely. And if I remember correctly, there's a basketball court there, right?
Yeah, there's a basketball court, a volleyball court out back. In the future, we'd love to build an actual gym back there so that during the wintertime, the kids can go in there and recreate. But we also do on the wings have foosball tables. We have air hockey tables. We have some exercise equipment that we use. A big part of it is just kind of making it like home for them, and making it more of a home environment for them.
And then structure.
Yep. Structure. Schedule is a big part of the structure, making sure that we're eating on time, making sure that we're going to school on time, getting up. Another part that we do is chores, actually. The kids have got to clean their rooms. They've got to make sure that things are nice and tidy. And when we eat meals, the staff and the kids all eat together at bigger tables. So it's not like kids eating in isolation. It's more of a kind of a round table type situation where the kids are actually able to talk to one another and interact while they're eating.
Now, how does reintegration work, like going back to their family? Do you guys work with the parents on that, or is that DFS?
It's a both. So what I'll say about the Casper community and DFS, it's not just DFS and the Youth Crisis Center. I'll tell you, it's a group of a lot more people. It includes therapists, it includes school personnel, it includes folks from like the Mercer Family Resources, could include folks from the Child Advocacy Project, to where we work together in what they call an MD team or a multidisciplinary team. And together they put together a really good plan for reintegration or being able to get the families back together. But it really truly takes a lot of folks to help these kids get back home and to get them home safely. So we work with a broad range of folks to do that. But yeah, we're a critical part of that because the kids, of course, are staying with us and we're able to communicate with parents and things like that a lot more.
Do you want to mention or talk about some of the amazing staff that works at the facility? Maybe we should talk about them a little.
Absolutely. Our staff is a very dedicated staff. I'll tell you that the Youth Crisis Center doesn't happen without the staff that we have. Our youth workers are absolutely integral to what we do. They are the backbone of our organization, and we've got a lot of great people working for us. Those are the staff that work they don't work 24 hours a day, but we have 24-hour, 365-day staffing. So some work overnight, some work days, some work nights, some work, but they all do a tremendous job. In addition to that, we have our case managers that work on the wings, work directly with the kids, and also other organizations to ensure that kids' needs are met and that they're staying on track with their plans. And then we have an administration team from our supervisors to our managers and our directors that really make that place go. If it wasn't for all of the employees, this thing wouldn't happen. So I give all the props to all the folks that work at YCC. They've done a tremendous job, and we've lasted. I mean, we're 40 years into it, and we've had great staff from day one.
How big is this team?
So the team's probably a little over 30 people. With expansions in the future, we're looking at maybe 40 to 50 people as we look to expand
That's
services.
not very many, though.
It's not.
It's like, yeah.
It's not. But, if you think about it, though, Colby, when you look at the setting, it's not a bad thing to have people that the kids know. So even if a kid does come back and, has to do another stay with us, it's kind of nice to have a little bit of a familiar face to them. So, we've been blessed the last couple of years in order to help increase salaries and things like that through extra grant funding that we've been able to procure. Because for us, that's a big thing, is that we have to continually reinvest in our employees and show them how important they are. And when it comes down to it, sometimes a paycheck is part of that, is showing them, and I think there are a lot of businesses and organizations that are struggling with that right now, is how do we increase the bottom line for our employees, because things aren't cheap anymore. Things are just getting more expensive.
They really are.
Yeah.
I'm starting to feel like my parents when I
when you say
the
that.
grocery store. And I'm
Yeah. And you're value shopping everything, trying to figure out how to save. And that same thing, and what I'll tell you is that same feeling that you have at the grocery store is real for organizations like ours, because we serve over 10,000 meals a year. And even though we're connected in with the Wyoming Food Bank and the 4-H livestock sale, there's still a lot of food that we have to purchase, a lot of equipment that we have to purchase for kitchen equipment and, pots, pans, dishes, all that. And everything has gone up tremendously just in the last 3-4 years. It's just skyrocketed. And that has increased, that line item budget to where we've got to find additional funds to support that.
Wow, and you've been doing this for 40 years. Well, not you personally, right? When did you, I want to ask,
So I started about 3 years ago, the summer of 2021. What I'll say, though, is that there was the first executive director of the Youth Crisis Center had been there for a lot of years. His name is Dick Driesing, and he did a lot of great things for the Youth Crisis Center, and he oversaw basically the founding of it all the way through probably the last 15, 20 years, or probably the last 18 years, I guess, when he kind of moved out and a couple new executive directors had moved in as well. So he was an integral part of it, and I know a lot of folks maybe know of Dick, but his vision really set the tone throughout the state, because we are one of the first in the state. There's a couple others that were roughly around that time frame, but we were one of the first ones in Wyoming to really establish an organization.
So does the YCC take kids from all over Wyoming?
We primarily like to focus on central Wyoming, but yes, we do. There are times when we'll get referrals from other agencies or from other areas, like with DFS or other district attorneys, or even some parents that may find that maybe their kiddo isn't working out well in a local youth center. We'll take some of those referrals as well. Really, for us, it's like, are we a good fit for them? Are they a good fit for us? And what services can we help them with that will help them get back home?
And I think when I did the tour, one thing that I noticed was it's not a place where parents send kids with behavioral issues. It's really, I want to drive home the point that it's supposed to just be a safe place for them. Yeah.
So, when youth crisis shelters first kind of started, they did follow like a juvenile justice model. Mm-hmm. And that really was when I first started taking kids that I would take in protective custody at the sheriff's office, it was a lot more strict at the center. A lot less talking, walking in lines, things like that, in order to keep more of a system in place. As we've evolved, we've completely shed that juvenile justice model and the idea of any penalties or any, kind of like a jail. That we don't facilitate or operate that way at all. Our focus is now very much clinical. So we are a clinically driven facility that looks at what's best for the kid. That includes things as trauma-informed care, motivational interviewing, strength-based approach to our programming, which is the best way to help these kids is by making sure that we're giving them the most strength-based system that we can in order to succeed. We are a certified substance abuse center. We do provide mental health counseling both for the kids and family, both kids that are with us, so kind of on a resident side, but also outpatient treatment. So really the clinical part of it has fully integrated into our operations, and our youth worker staff that deal with the kids every day are trained in those tactics with the motivational interviewing, with the trauma-informed care, and a lot of that type training to help these kids.
How common is it that children have substance abuse problems?
It's common, and I would say that what we are seeing, and this is kind of across the state, but also very much in our area, we talk a lot about kids having co-occurring diagnosis or co-occurring issues at the same time, which means they could have a mental health concern. On top of that, they also have a substance abuse concern. And, it could be as little as vaping or nicotine, but now we're seeing a lot of marijuana use. We're seeing a lot of hard drug use. And one of the scary things that we've been seeing is that fentanyl has begun to leak itself into the use of that stuff. So a kid could be using marijuana and all of a sudden they test positive for fentanyl, and it's because the marijuana was laced with fentanyl. But you also have kids that are taking advantage of opioids. Mom and dad may have some leftover hydrocodone or Oxycontin, and kids get that and use that. So it's highly common that they have co-occurring issues. And when you look at the family history, a lot of families, a lot of parents in those situations will have either mental health, substance abuse, or a combination of both.
Gosh, that's so sad to me. And I don't know, so then there's addiction specialists and, okay.
So the one thing I'll say about Casper is we have a very robust system of nonprofits that really are the backbone of our human services. The state of Wyoming is kind of unique in that we don't, like the state of Wyoming and most cities and towns don't have budgeting in order to actually have like a Department of Health, or the state has a Department of Health, but they don't do the work. The work is done at the local level. And the majority of the work that's done in Casper is done by nonprofits. You're talking Central Wyoming Counseling Center, which is a nonprofit. Youth Crisis Center is a nonprofit. Mercer Family Resources is a nonprofit. A lot of nonprofits in our community, and those nonprofits are really the ones that are doing that human resource work that if you were to go down to Denver is a function of the city of Denver. So there's more funding there. But what I'll say is that because we have such a great community here that supports our nonprofits, the nonprofits are doing well. We can always use more funding. I'm not going to deny that. But I think the nonprofits know each other. We know we work well with one another, and there's very little overlap in what we do. No one does what we do. No one does what Mercer Family Resources does, or the Hope House, or Seton House. We all have a different task that we do, and we all know about each other, and we all are part of a network that refers and helps both kids and families, especially the families. The parents are part of it with helping them. So I would encourage people to, whenever you see nonprofits doing things and asking for funding, know that you're doing something really good for your community, because you give a nonprofit $1, they're going to spend 99% of it in the programming, and maybe 1% goes to, trying to save for the future or something. But you get a lot more bang with your buck if you go with a nonprofit, donate to a nonprofit.
Wow.
Probably opened a whole new can of new ideas of what you want to talk about.
Well, what do you want to talk about? Because there's 7 minutes left.
Okay.
And I definitely want to get to the big event.
The big event,
so
yeah, absolutely.
We'll make sure to tell people what that's all about, and I'll post something online for our digital content readers.
I think one of the things one of the things that's really been on my heart to talk about and to try to advocate for is there's been a lot of recent youth on youth violence in our community, and pretty significant. I can tell you that my career in law enforcement, I've seen youth on youth violence. I've seen some really bad things, but the 2-3 events that have happened this year have really stuck out in my mind. Like, this is tough. These kids are facing some tough times, and the one thing that we talk about is our system in Wyoming is set up to where services are hard to get unless the kid makes a mistake and is in the court system, right? So it's almost like you're waiting and waiting until a kid makes a mistake, and then all of a sudden now court can help them. Now the resources kick in. I'd love to find a way to where that doesn't happen, to where we can get to those kids before that happens. And part of that comes to accountability on parents, accountability for parents, not only, truancy, kids going around doing things. The parents our system isn't really set up for accountability for the parents. And I wish that maybe there's a way that we could look at maybe putting together a family court, maybe a pilot court program or something that allows judges the opportunity to sanction a parent rather than the kid for something that the parent should be making sure that their kid are doing or not doing. And making sure that these parents potentially go to counseling or therapy or anger management classes or a whole many different things. And what I'll say is that this doesn't touch just on socioeconomical lines. Parenting issues happen from the people in the richest houses in town to the people that don't have a house. It can happen to any kid. And that's the struggle, is like how do we address this system without really waiting for the kid to make a mistake.
And as you were talking, I was thinking sometimes it's hiding in plain sight.
It is.
And so that's going to be a big challenge, but there's always ways that people can improve and do better. I know the teachers take a lot of flack too.
Absolutely.
People are calling out teachers, and it's like they can only do so much also.
Yeah. Their jobs have gotten a lot tougher. Yeah. I mean, the way they go about doing things is different than it was when you and I were back in school. Mm-hmm. And I truly think it's just a look at the system and how we approach this system and who we hold accountable. And accountability isn't like, you're going to go to jail or you're going to get a fine. No, accountability is, hey, we've had this program and we need for you to go to this program. We need for you to go get some counseling. We need you to go to a parenting class. And then we need for you to follow through with that and show us that you can do it. That's, but without the mechanism in place to do it, it's hard for our society to hold people accountable here in Wyoming for that. Instead, we wait till the kids have to get in trouble, or they do something that brings them into the system to allow them to get the help they need.
It almost seems like culture needs to shift a little too because of that, how the problem can hide itself almost. There's a lot of shame involved, I'm sure. So if parents had a safe place where they could say, I'm struggling with X, Y, or Z, I need some help. Yeah,
absolutely. Stigma and the dogma that goes along with it is tough. It's very similar to that stigma and the dogma that goes along with law enforcement officers and PTSD and wanting help. No, I can tough through it. I can handle this. I'm supposed to be a big and tough. But we know now that's not the right way to approach it. And it's going to be the same thing with parenting. Because as a parent, myself as a parent, it's hard to reach out and say, I need help. It's almost like a pride thing. But you know what? There are times when even I've looked at myself and been like, I don't know what to do. I'm trying. And then you got to regroup and you got to find those resources that help you. And I think that's a big part of it. And I just think an overall look at the system and something outside the box. Because when these things happen, I've seen it many times before. These groups get together and they come up with some really good ideas, but then they try to implement them, or they do implement them and they don't work, or they do work a little bit, but then they go away and then things calm down, and then the next issue happens. Well, how do we change the system now so that we're trying to prevent those other issues in the future? Because it's not just a problem that we can solve, it's a system that we have to address.
Yeah, I agree. 40 years.
40 years, yep, 1984 to 2024. Wow.
And so you guys, to change the subject a little bit, you're going to celebrate that.
We are, actually. So 40th anniversary celebration, October 3rd, the Ram Coda at 5:30. It's not a paid event, so you don't have to pay to come to the event. We just want to celebrate our 40 years. There'll be some really cool things happening at that point. We actually are doing some new marketing. We'll have a new website, potentially a couple other things, maybe a new logo. Probably definitely a new logo, but we're not going to share that yet until we get there. But we're going to be refreshing not only how our website functions and operates, but putting out some good stuff, QR codes for kids that direct them to resources on our center, QR codes for parents, the new logo, because our logo is the original logo from 1984. I love nostalgia, but you know what? So our board's extremely excited about the 40th anniversary. We've got a great board.
This has been Report to Wyoming, presented in the public interest by Town Square Media.